Greetings to Africans on the continent and Africans around the world. This is King H. 6 West African countries reject eco currency. I want to make this statement clear to all Africans who are watching and listening. We Africans are at war with France, and we must understand that we are at war with France, and France is doing everything possible to control the resources of Africa and to control the people of Africa. So the youths must mobilize, the youths must rise to fight against France and to make sure that we kick France completely out of Africa. All the embassies must go. Everything that has to do with France must go. We will take France out completely from Africa and ban them for another 300 to 500 years. And which by when those 300 to 500 years go by, the people of Africa will have to sit and discuss if they want to allow France or if they want to allow France to do business with African nations and the African continent. France decided with the support of the president of Ivory Coast to announce the eco currency. France has nothing to do with the eco currency, but France is making sure that they stamp their power in reforming and implementing the eco currency. France cannot allow the French African nation in West Africa completely free from the contract that they signed. And yet, France also wants to use those contracts to implement into the rest of the West African nations, even though when they were not colonized by France. So they're thinking of ways. France are thinking of ways to colonize other African nations using the French African nations. And it's all thanks to leaders like the president of Ivory Coast and to the rest of those the rest of those 8 or 7 other French nations that went along with this new eco currency, which is actually not even a new eco currency, it's just a reform and better CFA. See, France was thinking of ways to utilize this opportunity of the eco currency that was being discussed by the West African nations to make sure that they have some leverage, some control over that, because that is a lot of resources, that is a lot of wealth, that is a lot of money that France needs to keep France on the top. The tourism and wars that are happening inside West African countries and in Central African countries are all being controlled by France. And the people that suffer are Africans. Some of these French African presidents, if not all of these French, apart from, I would say, the Republic of Guinea, that stood out with the rest of the 5 English-speaking nations that rejected the new eco currency. Africans, we are at war. Some might think that we had freedom, that after colonization we had freedom, but we Africans don't have freedom. We don't have true liberty to control or to be the masters of our destiny. Other nations are in control of Africa. But the only way to make sure that we can limit this control and take some control over the fate of Africa is to work together as Africans. And as you notice, the African leaders in French African nations are working hand in hand with France because they benefit, but the people of those French African nations suffer the most. So the people of those French African nations must mobilize, must stand up, must speak proudly as Africans, not as French Africans, but as Africans who want their freedom, who want their true independence, their true economic independence from France, and to unite with the rest of the African nations. France is now making sure that the West African nations cannot be united so that they could still control, France could still control, or France could still be in control of those nations. Now, they have losing some bylaws within those so-called ECO currency, which is actually an extension of the CFA. But still, it just tells us that French Africa is owned by France. French Africa are slaves to France. French Africa can never be free from the hands of France. So French Africans, I'm here to challenge you guys. What are you going to do to show that you are not part of France? What are you going to do to show that you are truly independent? You are truly, you truly own your sovereignty, your liberty. Look at what is happening in France. The people of France are still protesting against their government. France is in chaos, but France knows that in order to quench the chaos in France, they must make money somewhere to add it to France so that they could take care of their people in France. And where do you think that money is going to come from? French African people. Where do you think that money is going to come from? African people. It's going to come from Africa. So the Africans will have to replenish what is missing in France so that the people of France will be satisfied and not have to fight against their government. But I'm here to challenge French African nations to wake up and start mobilizing and start fighting for Pan-African revolution against your leaders who are in support of France. Because if you don't, you will never be truly free. If you don't, you will never be in control of your nation. If you don't fight against France, you will never understand true liberty. France is single-handedly destroying the continent of Africa. France is the most devilish nation to Africans. Not just to French Africa, but to Africans. ECO currency, if all the members of ECOWAS had actually sat together and decided on the currency, France wouldn't have the power to intervene in what is happening in ECOWAS. But because certain leaders within the French African nations give France that leverage, because they have their heads far inside the ass of France and the president of France that they cannot do anything without France and the presidents of France. This is a war. France is continuing a war to sustain their lifestyle by sacrificing French African people and by sacrificing Africans. We are the guinea pig. We Africans are the guinea pig to France. France is going to do as they please with us to reap the benefits so that their nation and their people will enjoy the splendor of life. So Africans, we must wake up because we are at war. This is the first war that we must fight to regain our independence, to regain our Pan-African independence. Is to make sure that we kick France out. The 6 nations that rejected the new eco currency is Gambia, Ghana, Republic of Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria. The only way to make sure that French African nations can actually join and work in hand with these other 6 nations is for the people of those French African nations to rise up and fight against their government and against France. Because what is actually happening with eco currency is connected to what is happening in Southern Cameroon. You see, in Southern Cameroon, or in Cameroon in general, you have English and French. One was colonized by Britain and the other was colonized by France. And because France is the majority of Francophones in Cameroon are the majority, they are controlling the rest of Southern Cameroonians. And they've been doing that for more than 58 years now. So France supports what Biya is doing to the people of Southern Cameroon. And Biya continues to do what he does by killing Southern Cameroonians. Making sure that Africans cannot work together to create a better future for Africans. But we Africans must work together because the continent of Africa gave birth to us. Didn't give birth to France. France came and stole the people of Africa, colonized the people of Africa, and still is colonizing the people of Africa. Which is why many Africans would rather die in the ocean trying to get into European nations. And you have Italy fighting against France because of the same issue. France is still at its old tricks and would not stop unless the people of Africa rise up and kick out the leadership of those 8 French African nations and make sure those nations become true Pan-Africanism for Africa by Africans, excluding France from anything that must be African. This is King H. I'm out. Till next time.